Hi, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of Our Medicine 2025. My name is Joy Payton, and I'm on the organizing committee of this conference. And on behalf of everyone behind the scenes, we want to thank you for attending. When I began working with R, I was working in autism research. And one of my passions is making data more accessible for everyone. And that's why I'm really looking forward to Rita Giordano's demo. Rita will be talking to us today about how to present data in an understandable and more inclusive way. So Rita, thank you so much for joining us, and we're really excited to see what you have to share with us today. So thank you so much. We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Yes, as you said, today I will talk about accessibility. Accessibility is something that it's very important to me because while I was working as a data scientist, I found that also in when we say that we are accessible, there are something that is lacking. And this is why I really try to push myself to learn more about how to create accessible chart. And since recently I start also to work on data for healthcare, I'm very happy today to share my learning and my journey with you, and I hope that it would be very useful to you. So nowadays we have that patients can access to a lot of different kind of data, especially in app. So for example, here I did a screenshot of 3 apps that were on my phone. And as you see, there is this is a physiotherapy app, this is a pain app, and this is another app where patients can access to their data, and they show a calendar. As you see, for example, some here is, of course, is not a criticism of anyone. It's like, for example, for me, it's very overwhelming, all these colors. Or here, for example, this blue, it's complicated for me, like to, if here now there would be a blue, how can I, under this black color? So what we will see today is how can we handle color in a way that it's more easy for patient, but also for us, because sometimes it's us, the patients. So also for us, how can we make this data accessible and the chart that is readable? Another example is, for example, this is a report from a patient with arthritis. Of course, these are not real data. This is a sample report. But this is a sample report from a company that, as you see here, there is this very long bar chart. And this very long bar chart, it could be overwhelming. For example, think about an elderly that he has this report about arthritis, and I have to try to go all these numbers, and also another, there is no legend. Now also there is the same colors. When we use colors for our brain is a code. We need to give a meaning of the colors that we use. And in fact, here, for example, if we go to back upper, is this orange, but when we go to back lower, is this yellow. But the yellow is also for this back for foot. So here the colors don't have any meaning. But of course, for me, that I'm a patient, and also I'm an elderly, that I'm trying to understand this report, it give me an overload, a cognitive overload, because it give me another variable that is the color that I need to decode to understand. And also the other things, as you see here, now see if I can. Here we have number of pain record, while here we have percentage. Of course, all this information need to be decoded. But if we don't have the instrument to decode this information, How can we understand what is going on with our health? So another example is always from the same report of this patient with arthritis, is this calendar. As you see this calendar, there is this that first we have that we have some stars of different colors, some circle, if you can see, and here there is a legend. But now, imagine that you're a person that is colorblind. How will you perceive all these colors? And here is how you will perceive. So, for example, if we go to look here, we start. So the first is alleviating factor stretching. The second is repositioning, but it's the same color massage. So if I colorblind, I will see these two different variables equal. And when I will go to see here in the map, I will not be able anymore to recognize which is massage and which is repositioning. And this is, of course, create an issue. And also here, if, oh, sorry. So for both of these, because here I show you these the two typical color blindness, the red one, the chronotopia, and the rotenatopia for the green color blindness. And both here we see that we have a problem to recognize it is a square. So, and in this case, since when we create the chart in healthcare, we don't have the information about what the person, what our patients has, if it's colorblind, because of course maybe we want to test the glucose of our, or as in the example that I'm showing here, the arthritis. So maybe this is not a question, but when we define data in this way, we create a problem for the person that have to go to decode the information on their health. Another situation is the autism-friendly palette. There are, I think that many of you maybe have encountered some colleague that suffer of autism, and colors is also an important factor. For example, this is here at the bottom, I put the source where this is a source that I'm using when I want to use some color that are autism friendly, but after you can copy. And here you see there are some colors that are calming and secure, the blue, the shade of blue and green, and these are neutral colors. And also this is, for example, something that we cannot do it uh, always. But for example, if we already know that our patients has an autism or an autism spectrum, we can start to think about if this is information that we have, how can we design a chart that a person with autism will perceive in a very good way and would be useful for them. And this is some idea. Also, if it's something that, yeah, didn't go deep in the autism-friendly palette, but if it's something that is interesting you or maybe you need for work, I really invite you to go to look at this website because you can find some more information and some other useful article about it. Another issue is the fonts. Because when in the app, normally, we have the font Roboto that is a high legible font. But when we, for example, we make a dashboard, now we go in the field of the dashboard. When we make a dashboard and we have to choose a font, we have to try if this dashboard or this report that we are creating, if for patients, we have to ask ourselves the question, will the person be able to easily read my text on the chart? And here I list some example of Google font that are have high readability. I choose the Google fonts because they are free. But of course, there are other websites where you can pay, you can download some other high readability font. This is not the only source of readable font. And we have the robot that I said before that is used for app, because a mobile app, the text is very small, so you must be able to read. After there is this Open Sans, this Lado, Montserrat, Atkinson Hyper Legible. This was developed for people with low vision. So I will encourage you to look at these fonts if you want to learn more. And Lexend. Lexend was developed for people with dyslexia. But also, I don't want to go too deep in this field because the problem with dyslexia is that not every dyslexic person has the same reading issues, some read different. So there were some studies where people with dyslexia prefer a font rather than another. But apart this, that they make this research, this font is in the list of the font with high readability. Now in this demo, I will use these packages. First, I will, give me 1 second, yes. So I can show you where the slides are, so that if you want now, you can download the slide. I will put here in the chat. So here is the slides. To download, you go here and you download the raw file. Okay, now I will cancel because I already have. And after you can open with your browser. And if you would like to go to code along or to try to test some of the piece of code that I will use during this demo, you can first install these packages, because this is the one that we will go to use. For this, I didn't put how to do it, because you can do all with the install.packages, or you can do with the install package manager that is in RStudio. And the other things, you can choose to follow this presentation in two ways, or you can type while, because I will try to go slow so that everybody will have the time to do it if they want. Or another things is that here you can click and you can copy to the clipboard, and after you can paste on your RStudio console. So I will leave this page for after, and because now what we will do is we will go to see some library for color, for example, Calls for All, Arcol Brewer. We will use Recolorize. Colorblind R is another package that we will use that will help us to test our color to see if they are colorblind friendly or not. And after there is the color ratio that we will use to test the ratio between the foreground color and the background color. It's just, you need to go back, or now you should have the slides. I can go back to these slides, to this slide. The other one is this is a Savonly kit. It is another package also for ratio for color contrast. In the previous slide, I said that there are some Google fonts that we can use, but how can? We can use the library Sys fonts that you should have on your, but if you don't have, you can download it using you can install using the RStudio install package manager. So we will load first this library, Sys font, and we will use the function font add Google. What this function does? This function we define. So first, you know that you have to go to check this font in Google and add. And in this case, I want to add the font Lexend. So I give the name of my font, that is Lexend, and I specify the family. And now what you can also check is if this font is in your source you already installed. And to do this, you check. And when I check, because these are the default font, I see that there is the Lexend font. Now we will go to the deep dive in the color. How can we use the color accessibility? So for the color-friendly palette, there are several packages. I list here the R-Color Brewer, that is a package that we will use. There is Visualising, that is a very well-known package used in R. We will see calls for all and the colorblind R package that will help us to check if our color palette is colorblind friendly and to see how can we create a colorblind friendly palette. So we will see with our color brewer. With our color brewer, we can see the colorblind friendly palette. Color brewer is this project that there are several palettes, and for this color palette you can define if you want, for example, colorblind. And in R, you can do this. First, you call the library, and after you use the function display brewer all colorblind friendly equal true. In this case, what R will do, it will display us all the colorblind friendly palette. So, for example, here we know that this color palette set 2 is colorblind friendly. So, we can use it if we need it. Now, we can see how we can change the colors using color blue. For this example, if you copy here in the clipboard, I'm using the dataset penguins just to create an example to see how can we use this package. And we use in a ggplot, so we want to see, for example, the flipper length and the body mass, and the color we use species. We use the function geom_point, and to change the color, in a ggplot2, there is this function scale color brewer. And we need to specify the palette. Since before we already saw the set 2 was in the list of colorblind friendly palette, we can go to specify here our color palette. Of course, if, for example, we want to specify another palette that we like, we can change directly here. And another things that I want to change is the default fonts that we saw before that we installed Lexend. And to do this, in theme_minimal, I will use the parameter base family. Base family parameter will define that I want the font Lexend, and here is that the base size is 14. And we will give a title so that we can see. And now this is our chart. And we have now that this color is the color from the set palette, and the font for the title now is the Lexend, and also for the other text here. Another package that I want to show you today in this demo is this calls for all package. To use this package, there are several, this is a very big package. There are several functions, but what I want to show you today, it's something that I found very useful and I didn't find in other R packages. So here, if we go to type C4A underscore GUI, what we have, we'll open this shiny app. And here we will go to see this how it works. So you see, this is looks like overwhelming, but at the end we can try to go on and understand. So first I want for color. And here I can decide if I want categorical, sequential, and in fact here I calculated me a sequential, a diverging, cyclic, bi. So here I want a sequential palette here with 4 colors. And I want to say that I want to colorblind friendly. And now it will calculate. These are the colorblind friendly palette. Here you can see that where we can go to find, here we have the palette series. This is the brewer, the Tinari is the Arcolo brewer. It calls for all, as also this palette. If you use Python, there is also in matplotlib. For example, it tells that this is a palette of Power BI, and this is a palette of Tableau, and this is of Seaborn. And here of this color, if we go, it gives you a lot of information. So for example, when we go to colorblind friendly, say that is colorblind friendly, but be careful with points and line. So just we know that it gives us this tip. Fair, color are equal vivid. Here it tells you also for the vivid color if you need. And it tells you also the contrast. There is a good contrast with for the text, with the black. If now we want the categorical, and we still leave our colorblind, and here it's now I tick again colorblind, we see, for example, that here there are 2 smile. This extra colorblind friendly, also for points and line. So if, for example, we need to make a line chart with 4 different category variable, we know that it's a good palette to use. Or if we want to use, for example, the package calls for all, we can use this and we extract this palette from the. And after here, for example, there is the package mat that there is also in R, and other name of palette. So this is something that I really invite you to explore. And also if you need to do other project that also doesn't involve art, that is very good. You can play here, and you can see, for example, how people with the red-green blind can see. So here you can have directly the simulation of how people that are color blindness perceive the color palette. So now, if we come back to our presentation, we can see how we can create a colorblind friendly palette. And I want to use the package colorblind R. Can happen that sometimes we cannot choose our palette because, for example, here we saw how there are different palettes that we can choose for that are colorblind friendly. But in this case, I want to make you an example that you have a brand palette. This palette, for example, we have dark red, dark green, blue, and purple. But if we go to check this palette to see if it's colorblind, we can use the function cvd underscore grid. We add our palette, that our brand, and here we can see immediately how people that are colorblind will perceive our palette. And we can see that red and dark green, yes, there is some difference, but for example, if the point are very small, how people can distinguish, and blue and purple look similar, and also here the same. this color looks similar. And if we have a grayscale, so the saturated, we will have some difficulties to distinguish the colors. So how can we overcome if we are in a situation that we need to use this color? Here, one idea that to overcome this problem is to adjust this color using the package Recolorize. With the package Recolorize, we can change some colors of our palette and try to see how adjusting some parameters we can create a palette that is colorblind friendly. So first, we load the library Recolorize, and here we take with call to RGB, of course, because we create the color in RGB value. And here we use the function adjust color, and we need to give the matrix of the colors with RGB. Now we can choose the color 2 and 3. For example, I want to change the green and the blue in this case. But you can choose here, with this parameter which color, you can choose one color, or you can choose more than one. For this example, I choose this one. But you can also play with this function and try to change other colors. What I do first is to reduce the saturation and increase a bit the brightness. So here, playing with these two parameters, saturation and brightness, I will be able to slightly change the color in my palette and see if this palette after can become a colorblind friendly palette. And I also add the parameter plotting equal true, so that I can see my result. So this is the original palette. Here we change the color 2 and 3. So 2, it became a sort of olive green, and 3, it became a light lilac. So we change this color. Of course, we can also try to change the blue to make it, if we want to make the blue in another way, we can change the parameter in order to change this saturation and brightness. Now, if we want to check this palette with the colorblind R, we need, because now we have the color in RGB, we need to change in Xcode. And to do this, we use the function RGB that convert the color into Xcode. And here we use again our function CV_grid. We add the brand X that are the Xcode. And these are, I didn't say before, these are parameters to make the colors, the square of the colors, a bit shorter. Because if you don't use this parameter, it will make some rectangle very long. And here, you see here, you can also change the family. For example, in this case, I use Roboto and the size of the label. Now we can see that we can better distinguish the colors. And also when we go to the saturated, we can distinguish. So it's a matter to try to play a bit with the saturation and brightness, so that you can have a palette that is not too far from the original one, so that have some color that are still the same, but it can become an accessible palette. Of course, if you can have a brand palette and a palette for the chart, this, in my opinion, is always the best solution. because most of the time what is a brand is not how we can visualize the data, because for the visualization we need to take also in account the accessibility, especially because we are explaining people our data. We want to let them to understand what we did, and if this also interests them, it's very important that the chart is accessible. Now, another things that I want to talk is the color contrast. When we create, for example, bar chart, and we want to write the text on the bar, or when, for example, we make a chart and we have our title, and after our title, the background, there is a background color because we want to add a background color. Of course, we need to be sure that the contrast between the foreground color and the background color is high enough that people can see. And the color contrast is measured as the ratio of the relative luminance of the lighter color to the darker color. What is defined as an acceptable ratio is 4.5. And usually you test, for example, there are some websites where you can test your ratio, you can put the color, and you can try to understand, you can try to see which is the ratio, and if it's, of course, bigger than 4.5, you can accept. You can say, okay, I can use these two colors for creating my chart, for adding the text on this background. How can we check the color contrast in R? Because, for example, if we want to utilize this website, colorcontrast.cc, that we can check our, for example, here we can go to see color contrast. And in this website, for example, we can change here the colors, but of course we need to exit from a studio. We need to add here our coex code, and after here we have the parameter to know if this color contrast, this ratio is good or not. When we are in R, we can use the two packages, color ratio and Savon Liquid. We will see how to use color ratio. When we use a color ratio, so here we load the library color ratio, and there is this function that is CR get ratio. And in this case, I put, for example, two color, light green and black. And I want to see if, for example, I have to write a text, black text on a light green background, how this is. And here first, with this function, we get the example. That is more or less the same things that we get here, because here, for example, we have the yellow of the background color and the black of the foreground color of the text. And also the other information that we have is the ratio here that we see that is 14.8. So it's high enough, and we can use these two colors for writing text, and both of them it works. Another way is with the color contrast. For example, we can decide that we want to see if we can use on a white or a black text. And to do this, we use the function CR choose be white, that is black and white, and we give the name of the color. In this case, when we give the name of the color, when we run, we know if there is good for white or for black. Here, as you see, I define this variable because after I want to change. So now you follow me and you will see what I want to do and why I'm using this. So here, now what I want to do, I want to take this variable that I define here and I want to put in this place, this variable, because here, if you see before, here I add the two color, light green and black. I define myself. But now I want to check which is the ratio between the sky blue and the color that the color ratio package suggests me. And to do this, I use again the function cr get ratio sky blue, and this time I give the variable bw that is here with view true. And doing this, what I obtain is the the black on sky blue and sky blue on black, so I can see how they looks like. And here at the bottom we have the ratio, and we can see that the ratio between these two colors is high, so we can use this for adding the text on this background, on this one of these two. Because also in this case, the library suggests us the black as the highest, and in fact we can see here, but also now if without making any color rush, we can see that on this light blue, in this sky blue, if we add the text in white, we can, without seeing, we can immediately imagine that it will be very difficult to read white on this very clear color. Another package that we can use to check the color contrast is Savon Liquid. Savon Liquid does the same work of color ratio, but it gives us more information. So we go to type library Savon Liquid, or as I said before, you can copy, and we check the contrast between two colors. Here in the bottom we have these two colors. This is a sort of line color, this is the black, and we see, now we go to explore the information that we receive. First, we give us which is the color ratio, that is 13.5. And as we said before, since an acceptable color ratio is should be more than 3.5, already here we see that it's good. And also when we go to see the black on this very pale color, we see that we can read very easily the color. As you see, we have other information. Here, the other information that we have is the result for the AA check is pass. AA large is pass. We see that it pass everything. But what does it mean, this AA? So the AA is the minimum requirement for legibility, is a sort of baseline. For example, in our website is the minimum ratio that we need to have for that is legible for people. And for example, for the AA, it should be more than 3 if we want to, an AA large, so when the text, sorry, the contrary, AA should be more than 4.5, and AA large, so if the text is very large, for example, 20 pt or more, we can also have maybe a lower contrast, but more than 3. And the AA check, AA is the check for people with low vision. So AA, when AA pass, this means that is extremely readable, also for people with low vision. And AI large is for large font. So this is very important because, for example, for some website, the requirement is that it pass AA and AA large if you're doing, but depends on what you want to achieve with the accessibility of your visualization. You can also check for AA, the free A, because since this is useful for people with low vision, and if you already know that your visualization will be checked by patients with low vision, you know that you need to pass also these to AA and AA large to be sure that the person that is reading your chart can don't have any issue with the vision. And for example, we see another, if we make another example with the Savon Liquide, we can see, for example, that the contrast ratio here is 1.83. And here, for example, if you remember, I use the I use this color and this color, this for the autism-friendly palette. So, for example, when we want to use this palette, because we know that our audience is in the autism spectrum, we need to be careful maybe to use this as a background color. And if we need to add some text, to use a color as a black, because if now we come back to our slide, we see that the in this case fail if we would like to use these two colors as a foreground and as a background. Because it's fail also for everything. So it's always good to try to first understand our audience, to ask who our audience is, which medical issue they have. They have low vision. How can we help them to better read our chart? Especially, for example, if it's a report, imagine that you want to show a lady a report for about their a diabetic lady about their report for the glucose in order to understand how she can she know when the glucose was too high. And of course, if you know that this person also have low vision, you already have all the information to try to build your chart in a way that this person that need to read your chart need to know how is their glucose level, they can see and they can understand, and it is not overloaded. So here I want to give you some further resources that you can. This is because I'm based in the UK. This is a website that it's from the UK government civil service, and it gives you some information about some accessibility. And this is a useful website that you can go to explore if you need to learn more on accessibility for your work. Try to see other information that are useful. Here I also add the website of Calls for All, because it gives you a lot of information, and especially about what is the color ratio, how you can define it. So it's a quite a useful website. So of course I didn't go very deeply with this because since the demo was 55 minutes, I tried to go with the more important information. But it's accessibility is something that is you really need. You can in this website there is a lot of articles that can help you to better understand the the difference, for example, with the ratio, how you can define it, and also there is a lot of the literature. So it's a very well made website if you want to learn more about colors that I really recommend you. This is the package of Recolorize, because Recolorize is a package that is for science. Is not really to change the colors as we did, but I found very useful the function adjust colors in order that we can use it if we need to change the colors of our brand palette when we have this case. But if there are other functions that I didn't use for my, not only for the presentation today, but also for my work, but maybe there are some functions that could be also useful for you. So here I add these. Sorry for the beep. And I thank you for your attention. And if you have any question.
Thank you so much, Rita. So how do you prefer to take questions? Do you like to use chat? Do you want people to come off mute? What's your preference?
As they prefer, honestly, because I know that some people like to unmute themselves, but I know that some people sometimes prefer to put in the chat. So for me, it's the same. I don't mind.
Perfect.
What they wish. Also, if they want to see again some slide. And I hope that it was clear. The printed material. So the things is that when you have to change, because when it's online is they use the color RGB. When you print, you need to use the CYM. There is another, sorry, I don't remember, but yes, you need to check. For example, one good things to check is to print in black and white. This is an old school advice, but it is always work, because of course, if your colors works in black and white, it will also work on colors. But when, for example, you need to make a report, it's always better to, yes, it's CMYK. Sorry, I always confuse with the CMYK. So you need to change your color from RGB to this, and after you can print. But you can always make, for example, a print only of the test color to see how it is. Viridis, yes. In fact, I didn't show Viridis because it's always well used. This is why I use R-Color Brewer. The only things that maybe if, as I said before, if there is some, you define a palette for autism, maybe Viridis, there are these dark color. But yes, Viridis is always a good choice because he has this colorblind-friendly palette. So I always recommend from my point of view. Yes, in fact, this is I forgot to say. Yes, with the library show text, what show text does, you add to all your chart the fonts. So, for example, we saw in the presentation that we add the Lexend. Now, if I want to use the Lexend for all the text that is in my code, I can use the show text auto, and the show text auto will automatically add these fonts. If not, usually I do this with I add or in the theme, for example, with the base family, or I add in the theme function when I define the font family. And another things is, for example, if you use the Roboto, one thing that I always suggest is to install the font directly in your system, so that after you don't need to go to look if you need, for example, to write document in another system.
If there aren't any more questions, what I may do, Rita, is I may make you the host so that I can go open the next room. And then if folks want to stick around for a few more minutes, ask you any more questions, they can. But that way I'll make you host. I'm going to disappear to the next meeting. And I just want to thank you so much for your talk.
Well,
This is a really, really important topic to make R as inclusive and make our data visualizations and our data work as inclusive and as open to as many people as possible. So thank you for this really, really important work. I know I learned a lot. So thank you so much for your presentation. I'm going to make you host.
okay, yes.
And then if people want to stick around and have more questions, then please, by all means, do so. And I am going to disappear, but Rita will still be around. Thank you so
Yeah,
much, everyone.
yeah. Thank you so much, Joy.